the cranium or the skull. This cranium, inside it lies the brain, like this. Can I have? It's okay, just half is also okay. Like this, the brain is lying inside. So this part, the brain is finishing. Okay. Below it starts, this is the foramen magnum. Below it, when it comes out, this will start as the spinal cord. Okay. Now, the area between the brain and the skull, we are having the meninges, okay, which are covering the brain. Very thin sheets. The first one is lying just near the brain surface or tightly adherent to it, pia mater, then arachnoid, then dura mater. Here, if you see this half of the brain, okay, on the top the red color is pia mater, then the purple color is the arachnoid mater, the pink one is representing the periosteal layer of the dura mater. Like this, the three layers are arranged between the skull bone and the brain tissue. Very thin space, okay? And when the dura mater folds over itself, see here one fold is created. We have another fold created in this part. In the fold you see the blue color. This blue color due to the fold of the dura mater, or here we can see a fold of the dura mater. The blue color is the venous sinus, the area between the two layers of the meninges, okay, as we have discussed in the class before. Now, this part we have the tentorium cerebelli. This part is falx cerebri. This fold is falx cerebelli. And here we have a fold on the pituitary gland. We call it as diaphragma celli. So there are 4 folds of the hair. This is diaphragma celli over the pituitary gland. This fold, diaphragma celli, tentorium cerebelli. See the blue color space is for the venous sinus. And then we have the falx cerebri and falx cerebelli. These are the 4 folds of the dura mater which go into the different parts of the brain and come out and create a space for the venous blood. This is all about the meninges. Coming back to this part where we have cut the section of the skull, you can see the foramen magnum. Just below the foramen magnum starts this yellow color structure, which is spinal cord. We can see now here there are cervical vertebra, okay? Then after the cervical vertebra, which are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, after the 7 cervical vertebra are the thoracic vertebra. Then after thoracic vertebra, we have lumbar vertebra. And the last one here is the sacral vertebra, the big one, which all join together to form one, and the tailbone, which is the coccyx vertebra.
Coccyx?
Yeah. Okay. This is what you see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different types. Now from the spinal cord, you are seeing below each vertebra there is spinal nerve coming out on right and left. Both the sides you can see. Spinal nerves are coming out. Okay? You can see this. In the 7 cervical vertebra, because one is coming from above, all the rest are coming from below each vertebra, So we have 8 spinal nerves, 8 cervical spinal nerves, and 7 vertebra cervical. 12 thoracic vertebra with 12 nerves. Okay, no change. 5 lumbar vertebra, 5 nerves. 5 sacral vertebra with 5 nerves. Okay, and the last part here, what we see at the lumbar 2 level, this is a little bit lower, they have shown. the spinal cord will end, and there will be only what? The nerves, which is called as cauda equina. Similarly, as the brain was covered with meninges, the spinal cord is also covered with meninges. And each opening in the spinal cord, when it joined together, they form inside a canal, which is having the spinal cord. So in that canal, the meninges are lying surrounding the spinal cord. Then, even from the sacral vertebrae, you can see the nerves are coming out. Between the bodies of the vertebra, we have already done, this is a secondary cartilaginous joint, if you remember. There is a disc of the fibrocartilage, okay? So this is how much introduction or identification you need for the vertebral column and the spinal cord. The spinal cord, if we cut this into a section, okay, the two nerves, let's say this and this has been taken, and we cut this one and this one. This is how we look at the spinal cord: gray matter and white matter. From each section, here we have removed, so there is no upper one. One nerve on either side is coming. Spinal nerves, okay? Inside is gray matter, posterior horn, anterior horn, central limb, and inside the central is central canal. You can see this round one.
Yes.
And then again, here is posterior horn, anterior horn. We see the white columns like posterior white columns, anterior white columns, lateral columns. Usually the posterior part is related to sensory and the anterior is related to motor. If in the exam I point this one, identify how you will say that this is anterior horn. And if I point this one, how you will say this is posterior horn. If you keep it like this or like this, it's confusing. Then there is one point of identification. From the anterior, the nerve which is coming, that is just smooth. But from the posterior, the nerve which is coming to the posterior, it has a ganglia in it. I told you that this neuron, if the cell is lying outside the spinal cord, this is called a posterior root. Posterior root has ganglia. You can see the neuron body as a rounded elevation. And anterior, there is
no
ganglia. This is how you will identify.
Okay.
Okay? This is how the posterior. So this is posterior, this is posterior. Posterior root ganglia, posterior spinal nerve. This is anterior. So there is anterior horn, anterior column. Okay, these are the arteries, spinal artery. Anteriorly, there is only one spinal artery supplying the spinal cord, while posteriorly, there are two spinal arteries supplying the spinal cord. This is also one point of identification. Okay, posteriorly, two spinal arteries on the side supplying the spinal cord. Anteriorly, in the middle, one spinal artery supplying the spinal cord. Posterior are all sensory, bringing the information inside, and anterior are motor, taking the orders outside, and here they are called as the spinal nerves. They join and they travel. The sensory fibers and the motor fibers, they join and travel in one nerve. Okay, so this is how, like if you see the electricity wire, there is a plastic wrap on the electricity wire. If you open it, there is inside a red, a blue, a black or green, 3-4 wires. One is to take the electricity, one is to take back, and the other is earth wire, which is for not for the connection. So that's how the spinal nerve is. You have inside the fibers for the sensory also, for the motor also, and there is a covering on it. Okay, but when they reach the spinal cord, the sensory will go from the front, anterior, and the sensory will go from the posterior, and the motor will from the front, anterior. Okay, this is how you see the
motor anterior, صح?
motor anterior, sensory posterior. So this is what you see as the different identification regarding we need spinal cord, vertebral column, foramen magnum, meninges, or the section of the spinal cord. The parts of the brain just for identification, but then we will do detail later when we study the brain. This is cerebrum. Half of it, cerebral hemisphere. Hemi means half, sphere is round. Hemisphere, half. Complete cerebrum. This is part of forebrain. I told you inside these tissues. If you see, this is also part of the forebrain. We call it diencephalon. Okay, forebrain has two parts, cerebrum and these diencephalon. Okay, and then there is a small, this portion, midbrain, very small, and hindbrain, pons, medulla, cerebellum.
Cerebellum.
Okay, so this is, yes, midbrain between the forebrain and the hindbrain. Hindbrain having three parts, pons, medulla, which becomes spinal cord below, and cerebellum.
Cerebellum?
Yes, cerebellum or cerebellum or whatever you pronounce it. It's cerebellum. Okay, so this is what you called as cerebrum and cerebellum. This is different. Now cerebellum you pronounce the way you like, you can.
Okay.
Okay, so these are the different parts of the brain. We will take them in detail after we do in the lecture.
Sham.
Spinal cord we have finished, and meninges, so that one I have shown. Any
Easy,
question?
Sham.